Welcome to the latest in my series of conversations with people we can learn from in terms of how they have managed their personal finance and applied it to their life goals, and in particular, how they have planned for retirement. In this conversation, you will hear from Richard, who left South Wales in the UK in the 1970s for California to work in his dream job. He will explain how he adapted to a completely different culture and country in the days way before the internet existed. He talks about how he built his career in California and how he learnt about investing to the point that he was able to choose to stop working in his mid-40s. It's an inspirational story of how hard work, curiosity, continuous learning, and choosing the right life partner sets you up for financial freedom at a young age. And most importantly for me personally, Richard is my uncle, and I learned things in this conversation that I didn't know previously. So make sure that you are also benefiting from and listening to the wisdom of those around you. And finally, before we dive into this conversation, I am an IFA qualified money coach. So if you're interested in working with me directly, there's a link in the description. So without further delay, here is the very inspiring conversation with Richard. So tell us about yourself.
I was born in a small town in South Wales, working class family. We weren't poor or anything, but certainly not rich. My parents owned their own homes, so that was certainly a positive. I became an engineer. I like making things. I like building stuff. I was fortunate to be offered a position straight out of university to go work for NASA here in California. It was my dream job. I'd grown up with the space program. I can remember getting up in the early hours of the morning to watch the moon landings on a small black and white TV. Literally a dream job for me. Working here in what you probably know as Silicon Valley. I've been here now for 46 years.
So what year did you leave, and what was going on in the UK at the time that influenced your decision to leave? Because obviously you said you left for your dream job, but was there any other factors going on in the UK at the time?
UK economy was a disaster at that time. Inflation was running 25%.
Yeah.
Just crazy numbers. The miners were on strike. There wasn't enough electricity to go around. People were working a 3-day week.
So this was the mid-70s, right? 45 years ago.
This was mid-70s, yeah. It was a crazy time economically in Britain. Plus the fact that perception of engineers at that time was pretty poor. If you're an engineer, you drove a train. That was the sort of perception. Coming here to California, totally different. Working at NASA, I was like, to use an American expression, a kid in the candy store. There were all these things that I could play with from an engineering standpoint. So, as I said, a dream job. Being here a year or so, I decided that I really liked it and I'd stay, which is what I did.
I can't remember it as clearly as you did, but I can relate to what the South Wales was like in the 1970s. And so completely appreciate just how different California and South Wales was then and still is.
This area in particular, Silicon Valley in particular, is an incredible place to work from the standpoint of the technology that's here. If you look at the companies that have been formed here, if you go back to the 1950s or so, you've got Hewlett-Packard, and then you've got a load of other people coming forward in the 70s. Apple, Cisco, Intel, Oracle, Google, eBay, Yahoo, and the list goes on. And if we look at new companies these days, Netflix, Tesla, they're all basically started within 20 or 30 miles of where I'm sitting at the moment. New companies such as Chat, GPT, it's all the intelligence AI companies. So an exciting place to work.
All those company names that you reeled off, certainly everyone would be familiar with, and not appreciating that you said it all in the 20 miles of where you're sitting right now. But the Silicon Valley was equally exciting when you left South Wales in the 70s. So when you landed in the mid-70s for your dream job at NASA, so you were in your mid-20s at that time, and all you'd known was the South Wales valleys, and you find yourself in Silicon Valley in California. How on earth did you figure out how things work in California?
It took a while. One of the best decisions that I made was I married somebody smarter than I was, a native Californian who understood a lot about the sort of things that you've been talking about, the finance programs, etc. And Denise, my wife, for the past 40 years plus, had followed a guy that had a regular weekend financial program called Money Talk. And he espoused the theory of critical mass, being able to accumulate money so by investing so that you could live off the proceeds of your investments. He calls it critical mass. Around here, it's got a slightly more colorful name. It's called FU money.
Thank you for not swearing.
Basically being in the position where if you're really pissed off with the boss or your job, you can tell him where to stick and still be able to put food on the table and pay the mortgage or pay the rent. So that was our philosophy going forward as a married couple. We had the same basic ideas about money.
Yeah.
We didn't have one person that was a saver and one that was a spender. We both had the same philosophy going forward. So that was my some of my introduction to California and how I was able to settle down relatively easily.
Lucky you for finding Denise and
yes.
everything that she taught you.
Yeah.
And so tell everyone a bit about your retirement journey, I guess, because it's unusual in the sense that when you retired of a fashion first time, you were quite young. So would you like to share that story? Because I thought it's really interesting.
After the research fellowship that I had at NASA, I had gone into what's typically called the capital equipment industry, which takes silicon wafers. Oh, show and tell.
Show us. Oh, look at that. You can see me in the screen.
You can see you in it. Yeah, this is a typical silicon wafer. This is 200 millimeter, or I guess 8-inch in your money. And this is what's used to build computer chips, memory chips.
That must be where the name Silicon Valley comes from.
It is where the name Silicon Valley comes from. Silicon, one of the most abundant elements on the planet. So the industry that I was in basically made the equipment to turn the silicon wafers into memory devices. Excuse me.
No worries.
Turn the silicon wafers into memory devices or computer chips, the sort of thing that's in your cell phone at the moment, in the computers we're talking about, in basically everything, everything down to watches. So we made equipment, and I was fortunate enough to be able to essentially acquire a company with a group of other people by raising some venture capital and buying a company. And that's an interesting story by itself. The venture capital industry is very well entrenched in Silicon Valley. They put a lot of money into various startups. And raising the money was something of a challenge. We got no multiple times. And where we eventually got the money from was somebody that Denise had babysat for when she was a teenager. Wow. So we talk about networking within the valley. So we had a company that we bought, an alien company that we managed to turn around, make it successful. We gave all of the employees, right the way down to the lowest level, right the way down to the janitor, we gave them stock in the company. So they immediately became shareholders.
Okay.
And one of the other things that we did as the company became profitable was we also gave them profit sharing.
And how many employees was this, roughly?
We had 1,500, 2,000. Okay.
So like medium-sized kind of.
Yeah, medium-sized. The typical companies in the US of that size certainly don't have retirement programs.
I see.
So we forced the employees to save for retirement.
Amazing.
With the profit sharing, we gave them half of it in cash.
Mm-hmm.
And we put the other half into savings programs for them. Oh, the whining at the outset over this, they wanted all the money cash in hand.
Right.
We told them no. We're going to force you to save for retirement. And we brought in the guy that Denise had followed, a guy called Bob Brinker, to basically explain to them about retirement, about savings, about investments, because a large portion of the people were essentially straight out of high school and not college graduates, had little financial background. So he basically taught them about stocks, bonds, REITs, real estate investment trusts, and a number of other investments. And on a monthly basis, we had all employee meetings.
Yeah.
And as part of that, he would call in, and we would have a question and answer session. So the employees would ask questions, he would answer it, he would give them an explanation about what was happening in the economy, what was happening with our stock price at that time. As a result, we managed to build up quite a lot of institutional knowledge within the company. The employees would talk to each other. Now you have people with, barely a high school education that could talk quite well about stocks and bonds and understood investing and understood what it was like to save.
Gosh, that's an amazing thing that you did. So did they become more appreciative of what you did eventually?
Eventually.
Yeah, eventually.
It
Took a
took a
while.
year or so until they realized, oh boy, I now have this pot of money that I have for retirement,
Mm-hmm.
which will help a lot. They're not purely living on Social Security. You talked about my path to my first retirement,
Yeah.
which came a little bit of a shock, because at that time I was running more than one company. The company had been successful, and I was president of 2 or 3 companies at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Not the way to run a business, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And Denise went in for a routine mammogram
Mm-hmm.
and found out that she had early stage breast cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that knocked us, both flat in our backs. Basically, she quit work immediately, and I started to wind my way out of the business, and it took me 6 or 8 months to be able to do that. While we were financially prepared for this,
Mm-hmm.
because the company had gone public, so we didn't have any financial concerns. Mentally, it was a challenge.
Yeah. And how old were you at the time?
We were in mid-40s at that time.
Right. Mm.
I may have mentioned the story that during the first couple of months of my retirement this time around, we had an old shed, which were old stables on our property that I wanted to turn into a woodworking shop,
Mm-hmm.
for myself. So I had, true engineer fashion, I'd drawn up a Gantt chart, a schedule. So I was going to work on this thing, and which is what I did. And I would have Denise coming out at dinner time yelling at me, "It's dinner time. It's time to stop working." And I was like, "No, I have my schedule. I'm already 2 days behind." And it took me quite a while to relax.
Yeah.
Because there was more or less a sudden cutoff point.
Yeah.
Yeah. And people talk about losing their identity when they retire. A little bit of that, perhaps.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
My close friends knew what had happened and why we were doing it, but some acquaintances thought that I'd been either fired or laid off, or what somebody in his mid-40s doing.
Well, yeah, because it's
Job.
so unusual. Nobody, like, certainly in the UK, but I would imagine even more so in California, it's so unusual for somebody to actively choose to stop working in their mid-40s. So I can imagine everyone's thinking,
Yeah.
well, what's wrong with you? You must have been fired.
Yeah, exactly. After about a year or so, Denise decided that it probably wasn't a good thing that I was around the house 24/7. So, and fortunately, at the same time, I had a friend at Stanford University who asked me to teach an MBA class, which I did. And then another friend found out what I was doing and asked me to help him set up another business class at Santa Clara University. Now, Stanford and Santa Clara are two of the private universities in California. Stanford's probably well known. Santa Clara is the oldest university in California. You guys may know it. It was well featured in the movie Bend It Like Beckham.
Yeah, that's where it first came to my attention, actually. Yeah, and that, well, for most British people, apart from you working there, you're right. Most Brits will know it because it was the one featured in Bend It Like Beckham, even if they can't remember, because it's big on football, soccer, as you call it. Yeah.
Yeah, women's soccer.
Women's soccer, yeah.
So for the next decade or so, I taught just 2 mornings a week. And it was great. It was a great transition. I had lots of free time to do whatever I wanted.
Yeah.
And it kept me engaged. It forced me to keep up with current business practices, but I didn't have to get involved with all of the petty politics. So it was fine.
I was going to say you did 2 days a week, and I imagine that you get decent holidays as well where you're not teaching.
Oh, yeah, typical. They were on a quarter, not a semester basis. So it was 10 weeks, 3 times a year. So basically 30 weeks a year with quite a lot of time off.
So I think you were about to say it was then a 10-year transition from your full-on intense career of running 2 businesses. And you didn't mention actually that you used to work on the East Coast a lot as well as the West Coast.
And that was one of the 2 companies I was running, one here in California and one on the East Coast. And I'd spend that every other week, Monday to Friday, back and forth.
Good for the air miles, but not good for health.
Yeah. Always slightly. It's only a 3-hour time difference, but your body clock is always just that little bit off.
Yeah, that's not good. So how long has it been then since you were more retired then in the traditional sense? And how do you spend your time these days?
Oh, it's been a decade, I guess. I think I stopped, about a decade ago. Mm-hmm. How do I spend my time? Well, before COVID, we were traveling a lot.
Yeah.
We traveled 2, 3, 4 times a year. So that planning, the actual travel took up quite a bit of time. I mentioned the woodworking activities. I also like music, and I'd been able to combine both of them. One night when Denise was out at some committee meeting, I was doing the usual man thing, watching 3 channels at once, flicking back and forth. And I came across a woodworking program where they were making a guitar. So I got interested in that, and I thought, I can do that. And then that led me down the road.
You have one in the room with you?
Yeah, there's one behind me.
Come on, show one of your guitars. Come on, we would love to see one. Because it sounds like one thing, watching a video and then deciding to make it, that's mind-blowing. You're going from channel hopping to making that. Wow.
Yeah, this is...
And it even plays a tune as well.
It plays a tune as well. It won't play by itself, but it will.
Amazing. What a hobby.
Yeah. I'd gotten interested in that from an engineering standpoint. It led me down a road back to acoustical theory. It led me down the path of changing from building the guitar to dimensional tolerances to building one to acoustical. Yeah. So the engineer is still inside me somewhere.
Going back to the financial side of things, look, your story of growing up in the South Wales Valleys in the 1970s in a working class, sort of, okay-ish working class family, but still working class, because nobody was posh in the South Wales Valleys. Let's face it, still isn't really. If they think they're posh, they're put in their place pretty quickly. So then you left with an engineering PhD, working for NASA, venture capital funds, running 2 companies, then doing lecturing, MBA course, and learning so much from Denise to start with, from your wife, but picking, of course, a lot up yourself. Despite all of that, what financial things do you think, not mistakes as such, is there anything you think you would have done differently?
One thing that pops out is we had a mortgage on the house. I guess my sense of security was that we needed to pay off the mortgage. We needed to pay off the mortgage. We would have probably been better off financially if we'd taken that money and invested it. Would I change that? I don't know. You know, it made me feel secure inside paying off the mortgage, but that was certainly something that, and there's all the other things. You know, we should have bought more Microsoft at the initial price, and you know, silly things like that along the way. But in general, I'm very happy where we are.
Good.
Financially, mentally, physically.
I'm not going to lie, when I glanced at what the weather's like in California today compared to what it's like here, then that's a pretty good place to be as well. It's, yeah. So appreciating that you spent most of your life, not in Wales, but in California, but certain generalities can be true about finance and how you handle money and stuff like this. So what advice would you give to others?
Learn. Be open to learning. Look at your YouTube videos, for example. Learn about finance. You're the one that's in control of your destiny. You know, you can't go looking to the government or whoever to look after you in retirement. And if you look at certainly your generation, the life expectancy, you know, it's not going to be unusual to see a lot of people from your generation living to be 100 years old. Therefore, you're going to be in retirement for decades.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? What are you going to do with your time? You need to think about that. You need to put plans together. Yeah. And can you finance it? Do you have the money to do that? Well, if you don't, get off your ass and start doing something. It's never too late to start. It's never too late to start investing. And it's never too early to start thinking about retirement, about the things that you need to do. If you're already at the stage where you've reached critical mass, then enjoy yourselves. Spend some of the money. And just remember one thing. If you are at critical mass, travel first class. Travel first class because your heirs will.
Yeah. No, but honestly, I like that last piece of advice, traveling first class. But no, in all seriousness, I think that it's really important that, to your point, that people take some responsibility for themselves. And what we mean by that is learning and educating yourself, because I get a lot of comments around can't trust the government to look after us. And you're absolutely right. You can't trust anyone else to look after you. And it's rethinking what the whole word retirement even means.
Oh, there's a whole section of, unfortunately, a whole section of people in the US that will blame others for their life. You know, it's the government. Oh, it's big business. No, it's the bank. No, it's immigrants. Well, you're responsible for your own life.
You're, in my humble opinion, the epitome of a migrant done good for yourself.
Oh, and you know, I mentioned Silicon Valley several times, and the last survey that I saw here was that over 50% of the startups were from immigrants. And it's nice that in this valley, it's what's referred to as a meritocracy. They don't particularly care where you went to school, where you went to university, what your father did. What can you do? It's what can you do? It's based on your merit.
There's no class snobbery. It's a pure meritocracy.
Pure meritocracy. And if you look at, we're in Santa Clara County at the moment. It's very cosmopolitan. It's very mixed in terms of people, race, you name it, and we all get along together.
Final comments then. I guess listening to you speak, which is no surprise, really. No chance you moving back to the UK then?
No.
No, I don't think.
Nice to visit, but no, the weather outside at the moment is great.
The weather alone would be pretty appealing, speaking to you from a cold, dark October night here. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview. I think we scratched the surface on so many things, and there are definitely more things that we can dive into. So maybe we can do a few more in the future.
Yeah, I will probably think about the 20 things that I should have said.
Yeah.
Sign off.
Well, let's do some follow-ups and enjoy the rest of your day.